Hello, welcome. This is the Freedom Research Podcast, and my name is Hannes Sarv. My guest today is Professor Valentina Zharkova from the Northumbria University in the UK, where she has taught the key maths and physics modules. She has a PhD in astrophysics and has published more than 200 research papers. And well, some of those papers argue that instead of a popular belief nowadays that we are in a era of global boiling, we should actually expect some cooling of the Earth, and this is because of the sun. So, Professor Zharkova, it's really, really nice to have you on, and thank you for taking the time and giving this interview.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to answer your questions.
Well, yeah, I already mentioned the era of global boiling. It's something that the United Nations Secretary General said actually last July, in the end of July. They told us that it was the hottest July ever recorded, and then he told us that we have entered into the era of global boiling. So basically, it's his assessment. I know it's an assessment of many scientists as well in the climate scene. How do you see it? Do you agree with these assessments? Do we live in a constant climate crisis right now?
Absolutely not. I disagree. They have very biased coverage of the temperature. So indeed, July was hot, but what happened when they said the boiling in Greece? I've been in Greece, in Crete Island. The temperature was 33, 34, and it is normal temperature during July. It was nothing extraordinary. And the similar in other islands. And they started is boiling. It was sometimes the sun, maybe temperature reached 37 degrees, but again, it is very normal during the summer. And someone put artificial arson fires. They caught arsonists in Greece who put in fire. So this is what they covered, very, very biased. At the same time, in this winter, we had frost and snow in New York, frost and snow in Boston, in Canada. We didn't see any coverage of this. Nothing. In our BBC news, it is like everywhere just warming up. And while in the newspaper, they show frozen fountains in Boston or in Michigan or in Missouri even. So this is how they try to present the world, the news.
Yeah,
you distorting the truth.
You mentioned those wildfires, and this is something that they are actually all the time now telling us that these wildfires are because of climate change. You mentioned also that there were 89, I believe, 89 arsonists that
exactly.
Greece authorities caught, and actually this has been the story of over the years in Spain, in Sicily, in Italy, everywhere that there are bad people who want to start fires when it's dry and hot in the summer. So you're saying that this dynamic of wildfires, this hasn't much changed, or do I understand you correctly?
Yes, the temperature is increasing. It is a practical thing, and increasing not because the human are heating the earth, because the sun has so-called solar inertial motion, and during March until September, the sun is closer to the earth and other planet orbits than in the other months. This is why it comes closer and closer, and this closeness called solar inertial motion happens for about 1,000 years. So we report it in our paper and in my book chapter. If anyone goes to solargsm.com, this is my website. You can read the papers and book chapter. And because the sun comes closer, and this is why the temperature is increasing. And this is not anything new, which happened only this millennium or this century. When we look backwards, there were about 60 cycles. This cycle called Hallstatt cycle is 2,100, 2,300 years. When the sun moves closer to the Earth, 1,100 years, and then move further from the Earth, 1,100. When it moves closer, temperature increasing. And in our case, it will be increasing to 2,600 approximately. And then after that, it starts decreasing to 3,700 years. Of course, we will not be living here, but we will leave legacy. People can check and say, oh, this blonde woman told the truth. So hopefully.
Yeah. Basically, let's try to capture simplest way possible what you're saying. You're saying that climate change has nothing to do with man, but it's a natural phenomenon, right?
Yes. And if you look backwards, let's say 2,000 years during Roman Empire, beginning of Anno Domini, 300, 400, it was very hot, even in Scotland. I live in Scotland 5 years, and I've been doing excursions for people, and I was impressed that we got the excursion to the Roman baths, which were heat by the sun. It's a stone bath, which built only in the very hot summer. Moreover, in Scotland, they had grapeyards where at that time, Romans grew up grapes and made wine. So it was 2,000 approximately years ago. We had the similar hot weather, which we are approaching in 2600, this millennium. And nothing, people survived then, and I assume we survive now. The temperature will be increasing. Doesn't matter what we do here, because the sun comes closer and closer. And by 2600, I calculated approximately, if you look at the book chapter published in the book on exoplanets and etc. So I calculated the temperature will increase further by about 3, maybe 3.5 degrees Celsius by 2600. So whatever we do on the Earth, you can change the orbit of the sun and large planets like Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune, and Uranus. So these planets which drag the sun from the focus of the elliptic orbit closer towards the orbit, and the radius of this wobbling motion of the sun is about diameter of the sun. So diameter is 2 diameters, so pretty large distance. And when the sun comes closer to the planet, the radiation which each planet obtains from the sun at that time, which we're approaching now, will be increasing. So we cannot do anything about it.
Yeah, if human beings cannot do anything about it, then definitely we cannot argue that, for example, carbon dioxide is emitted by human beings or by human beings doing what they do every day is the cause of something. So what is your view on that? Why are we so much talking about carbon dioxide that this causes climate change?
I explain you why they came up with carbon dioxide. When they produced these models for terrestrial temperature, they didn't put enough solar heating from the sun. They assumed that the solar radiation comes from the sun is constant. This gave that the model with this solar heating doesn't give enough temperature increase, which is observed. And they said, okay, the sun cannot produce it because it doesn't heat. They started looking what can add this heating, and suddenly it occurred that carbon dioxide has a spectral line in the spectrum close to the visible spectrum, which has very high intensity. And they thought, all right, if you put carbon and this line can heat the atmosphere. And they show this example when they put carbon in the closed bottle and bottle is heated by the sun. But this is greenhouse effect. We know if you close greenhouse and put heating up and don't have ventilation, of course greenhouse become heated. But this is not the case with the terrestrial atmosphere. We are not closed. Our atmosphere is open. So everything is going. So this is not working. But they put, apart from putting this erroneous, assuming that CO2 will be heating, they also said the CO2 is increasing. Yeah, it is increasing. And by the way, it was shown that CO2 increasing 1 year later than the temperature increase. So definitely CO2 cannot be the reason. It can be only the consequence of the temperature increase. But CO2 abundance increasing, and they started saying it is increased by 400 times since beginning of the last century. And this is causing the heating because they add up intensity of this CO2 400 times more abundant molecules together. But they cannot do this either, because when you add number of atoms or molecules on the line side excited at the same photon frequency, these photons start interacting, making diffusion. This is called radiative transfer. And radiative transfer works this way, that if the number of atoms or molecules multiple by coefficient, absorption coefficient is equal to 1, only emissions from this level, optical thickness 1, can go out from the media. Anything which is inside is involved in the diffusion process, but we cannot see it. So analog of this radiative transfer is like you have a stadium, soccer stadium, suddenly you got a fire, all people run from their seats to the field, right? To the soccer field. But the exit from this stadium is only one gate, which has allowed people, 150 people coming through the gate per minute. So people who are standing close to the gate, they see the gates and they approach after first 100 people, 150 gone, the next 100 come in and seeing. All others who behind 10,000, they don't see it. They just push each other. This is called diffusion, similar like photons, absorbed, re-emitted, and we don't know what is going on here. So the people who standing in front of the gate, they'll see only every time these 150 people come in. It's called the saturation effect. So these poor guys who use carbon, they simply didn't use the proper theory, radiative transfer, and they added all the emission which comes from all these abundant CO2 molecules or from everyone on the stadium. They said, oh, they all contribute and this is why it is heating. But they cannot contribute because people who are standing behind, they cannot pass people who are standing in front of them. Similar photons who are behind, they need to be absorbed by molecules and emitted until they reach the level where they can leave the media. So this is what their mistake. But they put CO2 only because they couldn't produce enough heat in this model to explain current temperature increase. And this is what I'm saying. If they would put this solar inertial motion, the sun moving closer towards the planets, this would not require to put this erroneous approach that CO2 is heating. So you understand this. First, they missed what is heating because they didn't want, actually, they didn't want to check. I used the ephemeris of NASA and Medan Observatory. So the data about the sun Earth distances were on the website in the past 40, 50 years. They simply didn't bother to look at it. They just assumed that everything done by human. But I've shown this is done by the distance. And in my book chapter and recent paper, I've shown how they measure the temperature. And the temperature increase, again, is because the sun become closer. They measure temperature only in April, July, when the temperature is highest. And somehow they do not include the colder temperatures in the colder month. And this is how you get this hockey stick.
Hockey
but
stick.
Everything explained naturally.
Okay, but let's talk about temperatures as well. has been announced also by the United Nations, who are propagating this climate crisis to everyone, that last year was the hottest year on record. And I think NASA also told us that. So what do you think about that? Is the assessment correct? I mean, there are several scientists or Heartland Institute in the US says that these temperatures, these measurements are not actually correct because they are altered by the urban heat island effect and so on. So what is your take on that?
Well, I agree with the temperature measurements in this century became strongly corrupted. They put the sensors in previous century, they put sensors 2 meters above the surface and then measured the temperature and not under the sunshine. If you put measuring temperature under the sunshine, you understand it will be temperature strongly increase. Now they put the sensors on the ground, and if this is strong sunshine and you measure the ground, even asphalt is melting from the sunshine. But it is not the temperature which should be measured. The temperature which should be measured at the level of 2 meters above the surface, but they ignore to do it. Moreover, many sensors are now located in urban areas which are heated much more because they don't have trees, they don't have cooling effect. So all this asphalt and everything is heated. But saying that, I would say that the solar inertial motion indicates us that the sun coming closer and closer to the Earth every year. So the temperature will be increasing from March till September in the northern hemisphere, and the other months in the southern.
Okay, and
it will be increasing next 500 years. It will be increasing.
Okay, I understand the temperature increase during the next 500 years is a big trend, something like a big movement. But what I have understood from your work is that we are actually having also a something called mini ice age on the horizon.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Yes, please
this
explain.
Is the point. So the sun is closer to us, and given us heating, it is now global warming. They can argue global warming from human. I said it is from the sun. But what we have the sun as the main judge whether it is true or not, because the sun decided to come into hibernation in the next 30 years. The solar activity on the solar surface is reducing while we speak, and will be reduced within the next 5 years to the minimum between cycle 25 and 26, to the very, very small amount. Even now, the radiation drops and many other indications that we are entered already ground solar minimum. It is not clearly seen because the sun at the moment, at the maximum of cycle 25, it still has these nice flares, coronal mass ejections, everything. But it started exhausting it. Normally, during the maximum, we have 10 flares per day on surface. At the moment, we have a couple of active regions and maybe 1-2 flares per week. So this is not exactly the maximum which happens during the maximum solar activity, like few cycles before. We know cycle 21 or cycle 22 were very high active features there. So definitely cycle now is moving towards the declining phase, and in the declining phase we will see full spectrum of reduction of solar activity, or we call it ground solar minimum, which is associated with the wave interference. So 2 dynamo waves interfere, and they're in antiphase, and they cancel each other. This is why we will have very low amplitude of the cycle, especially cycle 26. And because of that, look very carefully, because of that, it doesn't matter that sun is close to the Earth and heated the Earth when it's fully firing its heating. When sun stopped firing the active regions and flares and coronal mass ejection even being close to us, we will enter the hibernation state where we don't have any radiation. And because we don't have radiation, the temperature on the Earth start decreasing. Will be ground solar minimum, which will cause decrease of the temperature on the Earth, on the background of this global warming. So instead of increasing next 30 years, we expect the temperature is decreasing by about 1 degree, like it was during Mount the minimum, which evaluation from the carbon-14 isotope in the biomass of the Earth shown. So this is what we show. And what is crucial here, doesn't matter even if you have heated the Earth with carbon dioxide. When sun stop sending us heating, all this heating with carbon dioxide will disappear because there is no heating coming from it. Sun stop producing radiation, we don't have heating. You know, when during night we don't have sun, it is colder. During day when we have sunshine, it is hotter. This will be, we will have a little bit night. And plus, we'll have volcanic eruptions during this period when we have ground solar minimum, which add extra pollution and clouds into the terrestrial atmosphere, which also blocks sunshine and will produce reduced radiation. And this reduced radiation will decrease the abundance of ozone produced by UV radiation of the sun, and will allow the Arctic and Antarctic jets to travel to the middle latitudes, up, down, even to Spain, to subtropical areas. And this will cause really cold weather. And this is what we are standing at the beginning, and it started now. They deny, but after 4 or 5 years, it will be evident. You will remember what I said. I said, oh, so she was right.
You're saying that this has already started. Yeah, I remember that.
Yes, it is.
You argued that it will start 2020 and from there.
Yes, it started. And even Belgium Observatory, it's shown, they have map of spotless days on their website. And they shown the cycle 25 had the sharpest increase of the number of spotless days compared to the whole previous 300 years, showing that indeed we entered ground solar minimum because it's heading towards the ground solar minimum and little of sunspot and little activity. So, and there are other indication of decrease of interplanetary magnetic field. Now it decreased from, I think it was 10 to -9 Tesla, now 10 to -10 Tesla, they measure it. So there are all signs coming out, which will come eventually. And as I said, again, despite the cycle is at maximum, and this is why we have increase of the temperature, because the sun is firing now, our boiler firing the full power what it can at this stage. But when this power is ended, will come through the maximum and the activity start decreasing, you will see that we don't have enough power to produce even normal heating, and the temperature will start decreasing. And it doesn't matter what caused global warming before, it will be decreasing, and will be decreasing until 2053.
So what is your advice on solar energy investment? I'm joking.
Well, I have only to have compassion to people who have this investment to solar energy, because if you put the panels on the field, instead of allowing green to absorb CO2, so you waste your greens, but the panels, when the sun is not shining, you have your clouds and you have snow, but when you have ground solar minimum, you will have probably snow somewhere in April, May, maybe June, like they reported during Mount the minimum. Some years they didn't have even summers at all. It was like spring, winter, short spring, autumn, and winter again. So so if you have snow on your panels or you have clouds in the sky, your panel is useless devices standing there, and clean them up and replace them. It's a huge amount of actually fossil energy to replace these powers. This is why many production companies actually refusing now to produce them and to participate in this scam, because it is enriches someone who owners of these companies, but definitely does not help, because the electricity they produce is intermittent. So it doesn't produce permanent electricity, while most people, most plants, in most countries, they need constant electricity. And this will cause definitely a serious problem. So
yes.
we need real
we are energy dependent society, and there is a looming energy crisis if we continue that way. This is for sure. But let's talk a bit more about the grand solar minimum and the decreasing of temperatures. So this is of course not by far the first time that this has happened. So a bit more about last times that this happened. What happened then?
Oh yeah, this happened many times. Last time happened during the minimum, when they had 6 solar cycles of this minimum. Then before this was odd minimum.
So when was it? Sorry. When were these things? When did they happen? How many years ago?
Mountain minimum happened 1645, 1715. Award minimum, you minus another 300 years, it will be 1280, 13 something. And then Wolf minimum, a little 350 before. It's a ground solar cycle is about 330, 380 years approximately. So this happens every 350 years.
So we have from the last time we have written records, right? So
yeah, we have written records. You can look at my website. I have in the post solargsm.com. In the post, I have links to the previous records, which they now hiding in Google. Yesterday, I was trying to find for you the location or the times when during the maximum of solar activity, the temperature increases on Earth. Normally, all these heat waves happening during the maximum solar activity. But they hidden all the publications in the 2-3 first pages, where pages are from 23 to 20, and you can get deeper on the 1999 or 1992. So they hidden this real publication from the past. So need to figure out. I found it and I put in my website so you can find out how it was. And during the minimum, we have in CleanTel. If you're interested, I can send you links showing that the temperature was dropped very, very dramatically. This is when all the rivers in Europe frozen. The ice started moving from the Arctic towards the land because it was very cold. And it was snow during summer. So this is in some years and during minima between the cycles. Of course, you still have the maximum solar activity. So when maximum, you have a little bit more input from the sun, it will be a little warmer. But when cycle comes to the minimum between one cycle and another, this is where you have the worst and the coldest periods. And during the minimum, we had 6 cycles. So definitely between them, we had 6 minima, 6 or 7 from each side, which produced very cold weather. And you can record in England, the River Thames was frozen, the River Tyne was frozen in the Newcastle, where I work at the university. So this has happened, and this obviously will happen again. And if people survived in medieval time, we should survive better because we're better equipped. We have a little bit more energy resources if they used wisely. Of course, previously people had energy in their own house. They put fireplace with the wood and coal and make it hotter. Now we are hands of the power stations, either electricity or gas. And I strongly advise stay with the gas, because at least it is independent and it is your own heater. Because electricity, once we had cold weather 218, which was minimum between cycle 26 and 24 and 25, we had very cold weather in England with -10, snow in March for about a week. And at that time, actually, they needed to ask people stay at home because it was cold and it is snow. So stay at home, heat the houses, and houses which were closer to the power station, they got this electricity and they consume all electricity. Other houses needed to wait until they put heating on, because electricity didn't go there. You know that each power station is designed for particular power to produce. And this is why wire coming from power station is particular diameter of the cuprum wires. In order to increase power of power station, you need to produce more electricity, but you cannot transfer more electricity with these old wires. You need to rewire the whole country to produce new electricity. So what they asked us, people, please switch off your devices, leave some electricity. The power plants cannot work. And it was only 1 week. It was only 1 week, and it was only -10. So I don't know what it will be during this mountain minimum, but definitely it will not be only 1 week. And so you understand it will be deficit of electricity for sure. So this is why stick to your fossil fuel in the houses, use your petrol or diesel cars, because electric cars, they do not work at the temperature after -2. The batteries stop, they're just leaking and stop working. So this is what will be my advice.
Mm-hmm. So basically, we should prepare for a couple of decades of cold, you're saying.
Yes, but it's not simply cold. You understand, when it is cold, at least you can do something at home. If you don't have fireplace, you can buy a stove, put the pipe outside the window and start firing stove with the wood or coal, whatever you buy in the shops or in nearby forest. But the problem will be, what will we eat? We rely that the harvest period is from April until September. If April and May is covered with snow, when all these vegetables, fruits will ripen? They wouldn't. So basically we will not have enough food for humans and basically for animals as well. So what we need to find new supply of the food, moving for the south, even not Spain, probably to Africa. And you probably don't know, but I made aware with colleagues from Africa that Chinese entrepreneurs, they're buying a lot of African lands because they know this will be the golden lands producing the food, and which can sell to these people in the northern parts of Eastern and Western Hemisphere for very nice price. So they become very rich. So Chinese people think about it. Our governments, they don't. We can build real greenhouses in this country and start putting our own greeneries, growing in this house. Of course, you need to produce light, maybe electricity light, if the sun will not be covered, and you need to produce electricity like they do in all greenhouses. But it needs to be done. It needs to be done. Those people who do farming, they need to have support from the government to produce this supply, so they can grow not only tomatoes and the strawberries in the fields of England, but they have also option to grow the same one in the greenhouses. So if there is snow and tomato cannot grow, they move to the greenhouse. They produce not as much as outside, but they produce some and help people to survive. Otherwise, it will be a huge problem with the starvation.
Yeah. Our politics right now are more thinking about decreasing the agriculture sector as a whole. Talking about, culling cows and stuff like that because of the greenhouse gases. The greenhouse gases, which you actually explained that there is no such thing as a greenhouse on our planet.
Exactly. There is no, our atmosphere is completely open. So we don't have shield which preserve this emission. So what they say, I don't know, CO2 is not a bad gas. It is the gas which every garden center uses to put inside of their greenery houses to make this greenery flourish. So if those who are worried about CO2 on the earth, what they should do, not destroy the places where the greenery grows, fields or urbanization, put in high, tall building. Instead, they need to put trees, more trees, because we have a deficit of CO2 3-4 times lower than the trees require. So at the moment, the earth greenery is in starvation regime. It doesn't have enough. In previous millennia, earth had much more greeneries. So we need this CO2. We don't need to remove it. We need to produce more, and it is food for the trees to produce oxygen for us.
Yeah.
So this completely opposite narrative, and which tells you that those people who put narrative the CO2 is bad, they obviously didn't study very well at the universities or wherever they studied, if ever, anywhere, because only uneducated people can put this nonsense what they put onto the surface.
So maybe there's a plan behind that as well, a political plan, not a scientific somehow arguments, but a political plan. I don't know what might be the incentives. Maybe because we all are emitting CO2 when we breathe, and therefore we are. It's our original sin or something like that. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it is a very ruthless approach, but Bill Gates said it's too many people on the earth. Maybe they want to reduce number of people with this starvation and everything. If they want to reduce number of cows producing beef because they fart, pardon my word, and produce CO2. Look, this is simply ridiculous. This is simply ridiculous. To what level uneducated people could come to explain some basic events? Just say them, guys, go to school, read the books, learn something, and stop producing this nonsense. This is what I would say, because the Earth is in deficit CO2. The mathematicians only last year, they published the paper, and previously they shown that temperature increases 1 year or two earlier than followed by increase of CO2, which proves that the first temperature increases and then CO2 increases. So it is not that CO2 produces temperature. CO2 cannot produce something which already increased. So this gives you the clue how uneducated and how unprofessional these people say if CO2 produces increases temperature. It is, I understand that everyone wants to be famous. Everyone wants to invent something untraditional for the humankind. Some people have this power, like Einstein, Newton, Faraday, Maxwell, and some people want to get this power without having this, I would say, natural ability to do so. So instead of putting natural abilities, they will probably put some misunderstanding or some wrong narratives, how they did. So this is what my understanding. They produce these calculational models and try to persuade the whole world that these models predict real temperatures. This model cannot predict the reduction of the temperature during Mount the Minimum. What they say, Mount the Minimum never occurred, despite all the evidences, all the historical records showing that it was real minimum. But the model cannot reproduce it. So obviously something, I am theoretician. I work in plasma physics and do model in solar flares. We do very complicated radiative transfer model. We do very complicated particle acceleration models, top class, and publish books on that one. And I know that models can predict whatever you wish, but you always need to tune model towards the observation, because only observation can allow you to separate calculations, because you can calculate anything. If you have theoretical background, you can calculate whatever you wish, whether it's true or not. This is another issue. And with this calculation, you always need to go, if you have complex conformation, not only in one event, like when I produce model of solar flares, I need to compare emission in the corona, hard X-ray, soft X-ray, then emission in the middle atmosphere, optical emission, and then infrared. And if all of them show the similar pattern, then this model probably it works. If doesn't, then we miss something, we need to add something. So, but these guys, they just don't want, first of all, I told you the problem with radiative transfer, they simply do not consider it. I know the Professor Hardy from Germany added radiative transfer to his model. And when he added increase of the solar radiation by 5 watt per square meter, he found that sun produces 60% of emission and carbon only 40. But in my book chapter, I've shown that the sun actually adds 20 watt per square meters every year in this millennium. So if you add 20, you can calculate that for CO2 is left nothing to add. So basically, if the model is not correct, they produce something. And the matter is to prove this is not correct. And this is what we're trying. And they try to silence everyone who question their incorrect models and point out in the direction. They act like Spanish Inquisition acted during the Mount the Minimum, which I consider is really ridiculous, that every grand solar minimum obviously is associated with the clinch or battle of two theories. Old theory, which will develop at that time. Remember, it was geocentric universe, so everything rotated around the Earth. And then Copernicus came up, and later Kepler, that they know all the planets rotate around the Earth. They burned Giordano Bruno. They made Galileo to give up this idea to keep his life. But after century, we discovered, no, Copernicus and Giordano Bruno and Kepler, they were right. The only thing they've forgotten, at that time when Kepler put his Kepler laws, gravitation has not been even discovered. It took another 20 years until this brilliant apple fall down on Newton, and he started thinking about gravitation. It took him another 20 years to publish his tractate about gravitation. And then it took another 300 years until 1965 when someone explored, okay, sun attracts planet and they rotate following Kepler law. But what happened if we include the gravitation of planets of the sun? Will they do something? And Josh has shown this, indeed it does. It does a lot. This solar inertial motion, the sun wobbles around this barycenter of solar system. And this effect is well known to astrophysicists because they use it in the search for exoplanets. So if they see the star radiation luminosity is wobbling, They know that this star system has planetary system, and they might have planets like Earth. So the astrophysicists know this very well. Why solar physicists did not know? They didn't bother to look at the ephemeris. Because when we published first paper 219 showing that the sun distance changing, I've been subject of bullying for 6 months on the website by the anthropogenic global warming people, saying that this distance between sun and earth never changes. At that time, I didn't use ephemeris yet. I just used simple suggestion. And I had 9 lines in the last paragraph in my paper discussing that the luminosity from the sun can be changing depending where the sun located. They made the editor to retract our paper. This paper is retracted, despite in a year I published real ephemeris and showed that my intuitive guess was absolutely correct. Ephemeris, NASA ephemeris produced by NASA website Horizon between sun and earth show exactly distances which I calculated from general point of view. And I came to the editor of scientific reports demanding apology and withdraw retraction, and he refused because he is afraid of this anthropogenic global warming people. So I published a new chapter explaining the situation. After that, I published a number of 5, 6, 7 papers, which you can find on my website, solargsm.com, and shown that indeed the distance changes very dramatically. And because distance changes, the luminosity which comes from the sun to the earth also changes as a reverse square of this distance. So the smaller the distance, the higher the radiation. This is why we have increase of the radiation in the coming years from last 150 years, and expect to have the same for the next 500 years.
Okay, you already a bit explained that there is no scientific discussion anymore on that topic, and you personally have been attacked by anthropogenic global warming. How did you call them? Anthropogenic global warming believers or propagators? Propagators or believers?
Yeah,
it's
a
belief. It's a belief system.
I call them like mafia.
Okay, the anthropogenic. Let's call it
because
mafia.
they act very ruthlessly. I know Professor Selby, who was showing that the heating effect, greenhouse effect, mainly comes from the water evaporations and not from CO2. 90, I think he would say 95% comes from water and by 5% from CO2. So you understand that CO2 is a very little player in this big game, but he lost his job at one of the universities in the United States. He came to Great Britain, got a job in the Imperial College, but unlucky he got sickness and died. And many others also suffered from literal suppression. Publications try to publish any papers in the leading journals. They put their editors, which simply do not accept or produce some ridiculous reports and not publish papers. So this is why we changed. I publish normally in Nature, have 4 papers in Nature, but now I cannot publish in Nature because they're so biased. We had paper on volcanoes accepted to scientific reports in Nature, accepted, proofread, we paid publication fee. And in the final stage, suddenly they discovered that we say that volcanoes will be strong in the cycle 26 and increase ground solar minimum because they block the sun. So they withdraw our paper, made like you redo it, and then we submitted the same paper to Astrophysical Journal, which was again accepted, proofread, and I was about to pay tuition, the publication fee, and suddenly they reached the editor-in-chief Vishniak, and he said, "Oh, we don't publish a statistical analysis paper on volcanoes in astrophysical journals, and they withdraw the paper on this ridiculous reason. They couldn't withdraw the paper on scientific remedies, but with this one. So we publish it elsewhere, and I assume others have even worse. They cannot publish. Some people said their journals are closed and so on. And even if you look at the Google, when we first reported ground solar minimum 2015, you type my name, you type mini ISH, you take millions of papers, interviews, and everything which I done, and they come up on the Google. Now to find it, you need to do 2-3 pages to get through them. So they hide any truth whatsoever. Similar with the increase of temperature during maximum of solar activity and so on. They hide it in Google. Obviously, they pressure the Google. And this is why I put on my website these links, which I had in 2015-16. In 16, I had interview with Sky News, and it is recorded. It's this video. It's a very nice interview, very good journalist did. We did it on Tyne River, on the bridge, and we explained everything. It's beautiful. At the BBC 4 interview, different interviews with every radio and newspaper or television in many countries. Now you cannot find it. The best interview was done by a Canadian television who came to my office with the full camera, and they did terrific. This is probably one of the best interview, which is on my website. Also, you can find it. And every time I'm happy to give interviews. After we done interview, I publish on the website, so you can see more recent interviews. But it's very difficult to find all people who are doing it. I'm a member of the CleanTel group. It's about 2,000 leading scientists who signed the document. There is no emergency in global warming. It is a normal process of the natural process of this sun-Earth interaction. And whatever they publish, they wrote letter to the UN. They wrote letter to all these COP conferences. They just keep ignoring them. And this is it's difficult. So this is why we publish this on the website. We publish it on the press releases. We go to conferences and we give these interviews to attract attention. So I receive many emails, people asking me what to do, and I always refer them to my website and to CleanTel website so they can compare what is going on.
Yeah. Well, there is a lot of new information for me here, and I think there's a lot to digest, but well, our time is up for today, Valentina, and I'm really thank you for taking the time and talking us through the whole thing.
You're most welcome. If you have any questions, put my email on the list, or you type my name, you will get email from the university or from my website, and I will answer. Or go to solargsm.com. This is my website, and you see the most recent talks, presentations with the images presenting the evidences, not only in simple words. I also put what you found in the calculation, so you can see with your own eyes what is going on and decide on your own.
Yes. So this is it from us for today. So I also urge you to look up Professor Zharkova's webpage, solargsm.com, and also you can find fresh content on our webpage, freedomresearch.org. Thank you, and see you again soon.